Let me ask you something honest. How many hours did you give your job this week? 40? 50? Maybe more. Now tell me, how many of those hours did you give yourself? Not your employer, not your boss's quarterly numbers, not someone else's deadline, yourself. I already know the answer. I know it because I lived it. I gave everything I had, every sharp hour, every clear-headed morning, every ounce of focused energy to a job that would have replaced me within the week if I had fallen ill. And at the end of it, I had nothing to show for the effort except a paycheck that ran out before the next one arrived. That is not a tragedy. That is a design flaw. And the moment I understood the flaw, truly understood it, not just heard the words, but felt them land, everything changed. Here is the distinction that changed my life. It is the most important thing I have ever taught, and I believe it is the most important thing you will hear today. You must make a living, but you must also design a life. Those are not the same thing. Most people treat them as though they are. They spend 40 years making a living and wonder at the end why they never got around to designing a life. Stay with me, because what I am about to walk you through is not a motivational slogan. It is an architecture and a practical, specific, proven structure for what it actually means to work harder on yourself than you do on your jobs, and why that single shift, compounded daily, will do more for your future than any raise, any promotion, or any stroke of luck ever could. I was not always a man who understood this distinction. There was a time, and I want you to picture this clearly, when I believed that working hard at my job was the same as working hard on my future. I believed that if I showed up, put in the hours, did what I was told, and kept my head down, the reward would come. That was the promise. That was what I had been taught. And for years, I honored that promise faithfully. I gave my employer my mornings. I gave him my afternoons. I gave him my best thinking, my sharpest energy, my most productive hours. And at the end of each week, I received exactly what we had agreed upon, not 1 cent more. Now, here is what I want you to understand about that arrangement. It was fair. My employer was not cheating me. He was paying me precisely what I had agreed to accept. The problem was not the employer. The problem was the employee. The problem was me. I had made a fundamental error in arithmetic. I had confused activity with investment. I had confused trading time for money with building something of lasting value. Let me give you the distinction plainly. When you work on your job, you are paid once for that effort, and it is finished. The hour passes, the paycheck arrives, and the transaction is complete. There is nothing wrong with that. You need that transaction. I needed it too, but when you work on yourself, when you invest an hour reading, an hour reflecting, an hour acquiring a skill, ending an hour in the company of someone wiser than yourself, that hour does not end when the clock moves forward. That hour compounds. It earns interest. It builds on itself. It makes the next hour more valuable, and the hour after that more valuable still. That is the distinction, not just philosophical, mathematical. The question is not whether to work hard. I have never met a successful person who did not work hard. The question is, where does your hardest work go? Ending into someone else's dream or into the architecture of your own. And if you have been giving your best hours away, if you have been spending your sharpest mornings on someone else's quarterly report while your own growth sits waiting, I want you to know something important. And it is not too late to redirect the effort, but it does require a decision. And that decision begins right here. I didn't want to spend some time on this distinction because I think most people hear it and nod politely and then go right back to doing what they were doing before. Making a living is necessary. I want to be clear about that. You must pay your bills. You must honor your obligations. You must provide for the people who depend on you. I am not asking you to neglect your job. I am asking you to stop neglecting yourself. Here is what making a living looks like. You exchange your time for money. You perform a function. You receive compensation. You repeat the cycle. There is nothing shameful in that. Honest work is honorable work. But making a living is, at its core, a maintenance activity. It keeps you where you are. It does not move you forward. Designing a life is different in kind, not just in degree. Designing a life means asking a different set of questions. Ending not, what does my employer need from me this week? But who do I need to become in the next 5 years? Not how do I keep my position, but what skills, disciplines, and habits will make me genuinely more valuable to myself, to others, to the world. The architect does not show up to the building site and hope the structure assembles itself. He designs it first. He draws the plans. He calculates the load-bearing walls. He knows before the first stone is laid exactly what he is building and why. Most people never draw the plans for their own life. They show up each morning and respond to whatever the day demands. And the day always demands something. The inbox is always full. The phone always rings. The urgent always crowds out the important. And so the years pass. And the life that was supposed to be designed never gets designed. The vain day, because designing requires time set aside for thinking, for reading, for reflecting. And those activities do not announce themselves as urgent. They are easy to do. And they are easy not to do. That phrase, easy to do and easy not to do, is the formula for understanding why most people never bridge the gap between making a living and designing a life. The bridge is built one small daily discipline at a time, and we are going to talk about exactly what those disciplines look like. But first, I want you to sit with this question. If someone followed you for the next 7 days, watched how you spent every hour outside of your required work, would they see a person designing a life? Or would they see a person drifting? Be honest with yourself, because the answer to that question determines everything that comes next. Now, I want to get specific, because this is where most people get lost. They hear the instruction, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. And they agree with it enthusiastically. They feel the truth of it. They may even write it down. And then they do not know what to do next, because nobody told them what working on yourself actually looks like on a Tuesday morning. Nobody gave them the practical architecture. And without the architecture, the instruction remains a beautiful sentiment, admired but not applied. So let me be precise. Working on yourself means 4 things. And I want you to hold these 4 things in your mind, because they are not vague categories. They are specific daily practices. The first is reading, not scrolling, not consuming, reading with intention, with a pencil in hand, with the deliberate purpose of extracting something that changes how you think. I made a decision early in my transformation that I would read 10 pages of a good book every single day. Not 100. Not a chapter when I felt motivated. In 10 pages every day without exception. Do you know what 10 pages a day becomes in a year? 3,650 pages. That is roughly 12 to 15 substantial books. In 5 years, that is 60 to 75 books on philosophy, economics, human behavior, health, history, and craft. The person who has read 75 serious books is not the same person who started. They cannot be. The mind has been reshaped. The second practice is reflection. This is the one most people skip entirely because it feels unproductive. Sitting quietly and thinking does not look like work. But I will tell you this, the most valuable hours of my life were not the hours I spent in motion. They were the hours I spent in stillness, asking myself hard questions. What did I do well this week? What did I do poorly? What am I becoming? What must I change? The third practice is skill acquisition. Deliberately, systematically learning something that makes you more capable, not for your employer's benefit, for yours. A new language, a financial skill, and the ability to communicate more persuasively, the ability to lead. The fourth, and we will spend considerable time on this, is association. And who you spend your time with is not a social preference. It is a developmental decision, and it may be the most powerful of all four. We will come back to each of these in detail. But I want you to understand right now that working on yourself is not a mood. It is not something you do when you feel inspired. It is a structured daily practice, as non-negotiable as showing up to work. Standing now, I want to introduce you to the architecture at the heart of this teaching. Because if you are going to work harder on yourself than you do on your job, you need to know where to direct that effort. Not randomly, not wherever you feel like it on a given day, with intention and structure. In my experience, and I have spent decades studying what separates the people who transform their lives from the people who simply talk about transforming their lives. The effort compounds most powerfully falls into three areas. The first area is the mind. What you put into your mind determines the quality of your thinking, and the quality of your thinking determines the quality of your decisions, and the quality of your decisions determines the quality of your life. It is that simple, and it is that serious. Most people treat their mind like a passive receptacle. They let whatever is loudest, whatever is most immediate, whatever is most entertaining fill the available space. And then they wonder why their thinking feels cloudy, why their decisions feel reactive, why their life feels like it is happening to them rather than being directed by them. The mind must be fed deliberately. Just as you would not feed your body whatever happened to be lying around, you must not feed your mind whatever happens to be available. The second area is skill. I want to be careful here because I am not talking about job skills. I am not talking about becoming better at your employer's work. And I am talking about life skills, the skills that make you more capable as a human being regardless of where you work or what you do. The skill of communication, the skill of financial management, the skill of health and physical discipline, the skill of leadership, the skill of thinking clearly under pressure. These skills do not expire when the job changes. They travel with you. They compound over decades. A person who has spent 20 years deliberately developing the skill of clear communication is worth 10 times what they were worth at the beginning. Not because their employer decided so, but because the market recognizes genuine capability. The third area is character. And this is the one that most self-improvement conversations skip because it is the hardest to measure and the slowest to develop. And character is what you do when no one is watching. It is your relationship with your word, your integrity under pressure, your willingness to do what you said you would do when you said you would do it, even when it is inconvenient. Character is the foundation under everything else. You can have a sharp mind and impressive skills, but without character, both of them will eventually be undermined by the small compromises you make when no one is looking. Mind, skill, and character. These are the three areas that compound. And compound interest, as I have always said, is not just a financial principle. It is a life principle. Let me talk about reading as though it is the most important habit you could build, because I believe it is. I was not always a reader. There was a time when I thought that books were for students, for people in classrooms who had not yet entered the real world. I thought that experience was the teacher and that the classroom was behind me. I was wrong. And the man who corrected me, my mentor, Earl Schaff, said something I have never forgotten. He said, all the people who have ever lived and all the wisdom they ever gathered and all the lessons they ever paid for with their blood and their years, most of it is available to you for the price of a book. And most people will not pay even that. Think about that. The distilled wisdom of a lifetime, 50 years of a person's finest thinking, their hardest won insights, their most costly mistakes turned into lessons, compressed into 300 pages that you can carry in your hand. And the price is trivial compared to what it would cost you to learn those same lessons from experience alone. Here is the discipline I want you to consider. Not reading when you feel like it. Not reading when you have finished everything else and there is nothing else to do. Reading first, before the noise of the day begins, before the demands arrive, before the world gets its hands on your attention. 10 pages every morning, before anything else. Before I want you to think about what you would choose to read. Not what is popular, not what everyone is talking about. What would make you more capable? What would expand your understanding of human nature, of economics, of history, of philosophy? And here is a practice I recommend beyond the reading itself. Keep a journal alongside the book. When a sentence stops you, when you read something and feel a small shock of recognition or a challenge to something you believed, write it down. Write your reaction to it. Bother argue with it. Agree with it. Wrestle with it. Because the goal of reading is not to accumulate information. The goal is to change how you think. And thinking changes when you engage actively, not passively. A person who reads one book a year has a different mind than a person who reads 12. And a person who reads 12 has a different mind than a person who reads 24. This is not a matter of intelligence. It is a matter of discipline. And discipline, unlike talent, is entirely within your control. The library is open. The question is whether you will walk through the door. Now, I want to talk about something that most people resist, and resist precisely because it is the most powerful practice I know. Reflection. Not daydreaming. Not worrying. Not reviewing your to-do list. Genuine, structured, honest reflection, sitting in stillness and asking yourself the questions that matter. Let me tell you why most people avoid it. Because when you sit in stillness and ask yourself honest questions, you get honest answers. And honest answers are sometimes uncomfortable. They tell you that you have been drifting, that you have been avoiding something, that the story you have been telling yourself about why you are where you are is not entirely accurate. Most people prefer the noise. The noise is comfortable. The noise keeps the honest answers at a distance. But here is what I have learned, and I want you to hear this carefully. The person who is willing to sit in stillness and ask the hard questions, and then actually listen to the answers, that person has an extraordinary advantage over the person who is always in motion, always busy, always reacting. Here are the questions I built my reflection practice around. I offer them to you not as the only questions, but as a starting point. What did I do well this week? Be specific. Name the actual moments. What did I do poorly? Again, be specific. Do not be vague in your self-assessment. Vague self-assessment produces vague improvement. What am I becoming? This is the most important question of all. Not, what am I doing? But what am I becoming? But because what you are doing is temporary, what you are becoming is permanent. And finally, what must I change? I recommend setting aside 30 minutes at the end of each week, the same time, the same place, with a journal and a pen and no interruptions. Then 30 minutes of honest accounting, not self-punishment, honest accounting. You review the week. You note what worked. You identify what did not. You make one small adjustment for the week ahead, not 10 adjustments. One. Because the person who tries to change 10 things at once changes nothing. The compounding effect of this practice is extraordinary. After 1 year of weekly reflection, you will know yourself better than most people know themselves after a lifetime. You will have a clear record of your growth, your patterns, your tendencies, your progress. That record is invaluable. It is the map of who you are becoming, and who you are becoming. Not what you are earning, not what you own, not what your title is the truest measure of a life well invested. We are at the halfway point of this teaching, and I want to pause for a moment. If what you have heard so far, the distinction between making a living and designing a life, the three compounding areas, the reading discipline, the reflection practice, if any of that has landed with you the way I hope it has, then I want to invite you to stay close to this channel, because this is what we do here. Every week, we go deep into the philosophy that actually changes lives. Not surface level motivation, not empty encouragement, but the specific in practical architecture of personal development that most people have never been given. If that is what you are looking for, subscribe right now. One click, and you will never miss a message. Because what I am about to walk you through in the second half of this teaching, the skill acquisition framework, the law of association, and the three-part daily structure that ties all of this together, that is where the real architecture lies. And you do not want to miss it. Let me talk to you now about skill, and I want to reframe the way you think about it. Most people think about skills in terms of their job. What skills do I need to keep my position? What skills does my employer want? What certification will make me more promotable? Those are not bad questions, but they are not the questions I am asking you to sit with. I am asking a different question entirely. What skills would make you genuinely more valuable as a human being? Regardless of who employs you, regardless of the economy, regardless of what changes in the world around you. Because here is what I have observed over a lifetime of studying successful people. The skills that compound most powerfully are not technical skills. They are human skills. The ability to communicate, to speak clearly, to write with precision, to articulate an idea in a way that moves people. I have watched this skill alone transform lives. Earning a person who can communicate well is never without opportunity. The world will always pay for the ability to make complex things clear. The ability to manage money, not to earn it, to manage it. To understand the difference between an asset and a liability. To understand the compounding principle, not just as an idea, but as a daily practice. The most people earn money their entire lives and never learn to manage it. And so the money passes through their hands like water, leaving nothing behind. The ability to lead, to inspire others, to create an environment where people do their best work. Leadership is not a personality trait. It is a skill. And like every skill, it can be studied, practiced, and developed. The ability to think clearly under pressure. This is rarer than you might imagine. Most people, when the pressure rises, abandon clear thinking in favor of reaction. The person who can remain calm, assess the situation accurately, and make a sound decision when everything is uncertain, that person is extraordinary. And the world knows it. Then here is the discipline I want you to build around skill acquisition. Choose one skill each quarter, not 5. One. And spend 30 minutes every day, every single day, studying that skill, practicing it, applying it, and reflecting on your progress. And 30 minutes a day is 210 minutes a week. That is 3.5 hours. In a quarter, that is roughly 45 hours of deliberate practice on one specific skill. 45 focused hours on a single skill will make you measurably better, not perfect. Better and better compounded over time becomes formidable. Then the person who does this for 5 years, who gives 30 minutes a day to deliberate skill development across 20 different capabilities, is not the same person who started. They are genuinely, substantively more capable, and that capability belongs to them, not to their employer, not to the economy. To them, that is what I mean by working on yourself. Now I want to talk about the most underestimated element of personal development. Not what you read, not what you study, not even your daily disciplines. As important as all of those are, I want to talk about who you spend your time with. Here is what I have come to believe, and I say with the full weight of everything I have observed. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Let that sit for a moment. Not approximately, not roughly. The average. Your income will tend toward the average of those 5 people. Your health habits will tend toward the average. Your ambitions, your standards, your beliefs about what is possible, all of it gravitates toward the average of your closest associations. This is not a judgment on the people around you. It is simply the law of association at work. We are social creatures. We absorb the standards of our environment. We rise to the level of the people around us, or we settle to it. Either way, the direction is determined by the association. Now, I want to be careful here because this teaching is sometimes misunderstood as a license for arrogance, as permission to discard people who are not successful enough. That is not what I am saying. I am saying this: be intentional about who has access to your most formative hours. In your family, your old friends, the people you love. You honor those relationships, but the people who shape your thinking, who challenge your standards, who hold you to account for the life you said you wanted to build, those associations must be chosen deliberately. And here is the question I want you to ask yourself right now. Of the 5 people you spend the most time with, are they pulling you forward or are they holding you in place? Be honest, not cruel honest. Because if the people closest to you are comfortable with mediocrity, if they mock ambition, if they discourage growth, if they greet your goals with skepticism, then you are fighting the current every single day. And fighting the current is exhausting. It slows you down. It wears you out. Now, you cannot always change who you live near or work beside, but you can choose who you learn from. You can seek out the people who are doing what you want to do and study how they think. You can read the books of men and women who have built what you want to build. You can join communities of people who share your values and your ambitions. Association is this. Choose it wisely. I want to give you something practical now. A framework I have used for decades to explain why most people fail. Not through catastrophe, but through something far more subtle. The formula for failure is this: a few errors in judgment repeated every day. Notice I did not say catastrophic mistakes. I did not say moral failures or dramatic collapses. A few errors in judgment, small ones, the kind that do not seem to matter on any given day. Not reading today. It will not hurt me. Not reflecting this week. I will catch up next week. Not exercising today. I will start on Monday. Not saving this month. There will be more next month. Each of these decisions in isolation is trivial. Missing one day of reading will not ruin your life. Skipping 1 week of reflection will not collapse your character. The error is small. And that is precisely what makes it dangerous. Because small errors repeated every day compound into failure just as surely as small disciplines repeated every day, compound into success. The formula for success is this: a few simple disciplines, practiced every day, not heroic efforts, not extraordinary talent, a few simple disciplines. Reading 10 pages, reflecting for 30 minutes, practicing one skill, choosing better associations. These are not dramatic actions. They are not impressive to observe. They will not earn you admiration in the short term. But in the long term, in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20, the person who has practiced these disciplines every day will be unrecognizable compared to the person who did not. This is the truth that most people find uncomfortable, and I want to name the discomfort directly. The disciplines are easy to do, and they are easy not to do. That is the entire game. Right there. The disciplines are not hard. Reading 10 pages is not hard. Sitting quietly for 30 minutes is not hard. Choosing to spend time with people who challenge you is not hard. But none of these things are urgent. They will not send you an alarm. They will not demand your attention. The day will fill itself with urgent things and leave no room for the important things. Unless you protect the important things deliberately. Comment below and tell me which of these disciplines have you been neglecting. Not as a confession, as an inventory. Because the first step to changing a pattern is naming it honestly. Now I want to give you the practical architecture, the daily structure that ties everything together. Because philosophy without structure is inspiration that fades by Tuesday. And I have no interest in giving you inspiration that fades. I want to give you a framework that lasts. Here is the 3-part structure I recommend for working on yourself every single day. The first part is the morning investment. Before the demands of the day begin, before the inbox, before the obligations, before the noise. You give 30 to 60 minutes to your own development. This is your reading time. You a reflection time, your skill practice time. You choose one of the 3 and you honor it every morning without negotiation. I want to be clear about what without negotiation means. And it does not mean you do it when you feel like it. It does not mean you do it when everything else is handled. It means you do it first, because if you wait until everything else is handled, the morning investment never happens. The day will always find something more urgent to fill that time. The second part is the midday evaluation. This takes 5 minutes, just 5. At the midpoint of your day, you pause and ask yourself one question. Am I spending my time today on what actually matters? Or am I reacting? In that question, asked honestly at the midpoint of every day, will redirect more wasted hours than any productivity system I have ever encountered, because the answer is usually obvious. And then the obvious answer, when you are willing to face it, changes the rest of the day. The third part is the evening review. At the end of each day, before you sleep, you take 10 minutes and you ask, what did I learn today? What will I do differently tomorrow? Not a long process, 10 minutes, but consistent every evening. Here is what this structure produces over time. The morning investment builds your mind, your skills, and your character, one day at a time. The midday evaluation keeps you honest about how you are actually spending your hours. The evening review extracts the lessons from each day so that the day is not simply lived and forgotten, but lived and learned from. Most people live the same year 50 times and call it a life. They repeat the same patterns, make the same mistakes, and wonder why nothing changes. Then the 3-part daily structure breaks that cycle, not dramatically, quietly, one day at a time. And quiet, daily, consistent improvement is the most powerful force in human development. It is not exciting. It does not make for dramatic stories. But it works, and it works for everyone who applies it. Without exception, I want to talk to you about the seasons, because I think this teaching more than almost anything else I know, will save you from the frustration that causes most people to quit. There are 4 seasons in the year, and there are 4 seasons in the life of anyone who is seriously working on themselves. The first season is winter. Winter is the time of difficulty, the time when the ground is hard and nothing seems to be growing. This is the season of beginnings, when you have started your disciplines, but have not yet seen any results. When you are reading, but your thinking has not yet visibly changed. When you are practicing a skill, but you are still clumsy at it. When you are reflecting, but the patterns are not yet clear. Winter is the season that causes most people to quit. Because in winter, the effort is real, but the evidence of progress is invisible. And we are impatient creatures. And we want to see the fruit before we have finished planting. Here is what I want you to remember in your winter. The seed does not stop growing because you cannot see it. The roots are going deeper. The foundation is being laid. The work you are doing in your winter, the reading, the reflection, the skill practice, the careful management of your associations, all of it is happening beneath the surface, building a root system that will eventually support something extraordinary. Do not dig up the seed to check if it is growing. The second season is spring. Spring is the time of planting, of action, of effort, of doing the work with full energy. Spring is energizing. You feel the momentum. You can see the green shoots beginning to appear. This is the season of enthusiasm, and it is important to honor it, to work hard in the spring, because the spring does not last forever. The third season is summer. Then summer is the long middle, the sustained effort, the maintenance of disciplines when the initial enthusiasm has faded and the harvest is not yet in sight. Summer is the test of character. It is easy to work hard in the spring when everything feels new. It is harder to maintain the disciplines in the long, unglamorous middle. The fourth season is autumn, harvest time. The time when the compounding begins to become visible, when the skills you have been building start to open doors, when the reading you have been doing starts to show up in the quality of your thinking, when the associations you have been cultivating start to create opportunities. Here is the discipline of autumn, take the harvest. Do not be so busy planting that you forget to receive what the seasons have produced. Acknowledge your growth. Celebrate your progress. Yin, and then begin again. Because after every autumn comes another winter, and the cycle continues. You are always in one of these seasons. The question is, do you know which one you are in right now? And are you doing what that season requires? We have covered a great deal of ground together today. And I want to bring it all together now, because the architecture is only useful if you can see the whole structure at once. Here it is what I want you to take away from everything we have discussed. The most important distinction you will ever make is the distinction between making a living and designing a life. You need both. But most people spend all of their effort on the first and none on the second. And then they arrive at the end of their years with a resume full of effort and a life that was never quite designed. The remedy is specific. It is not a motivational feeling. It is a daily practice. Work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Feed your mind deliberately. Read 10 pages every morning. Keep a journal. Wrestle with ideas. Do not let your mind be shaped by whatever is loudest. Shape it yourself with intention. Develop your skills systematically. Choose one skill each quarter and give it 30 minutes every day. Not the skills your employer wants from you. The skills that make you genuinely more capable as a human being. Communication, financial discipline, leadership, clear thinking under pressure. Build your character quietly. Do what you said you would do. Honor your word when no one is watching. They make the small right decisions every day, especially the ones that do not seem to matter, because they are the ones that shape you most. Choose your associations with care. You are becoming the average of the people closest to you. Let that fact drive your decisions about who gets access to your most formative hours. Embrace the seasons. You will have winters. Long, cold, invisible periods where the work is real, but the results are not yet visible. Do not quit in your winter. The roots are growing. Trust the process. Do the work. And build the daily structure that makes all of this possible. 30 to 60 minutes in the morning before the world gets its hands on your attention. Dinning 5 midday, it's at mid. Ask whether you are spending your time on what matters. 10 minutes in the evening to extract the lesson from the day. That is the architecture. That is the Rohn revelation. Not a slogan, not a feeling, a structure, a daily practice, and in a decision to treat your own development with at least the same seriousness you give to your employer's requirements. Now, I want to ask you something directly. Of everything we have covered today, the reading discipline, the reflection practice, the skill acquisition framework, the law of association, the 3-part daily structure, wanting the patience of the seasons. Which one are you most committed to beginning this week? Not eventually. This week, tomorrow morning. Drop your answer in the comments. Tell me which practice you are starting. Because the moment you write it down and share it, the moment you make it public, it becomes more real. You have made a commitment. And commitment is where the designing of a life actually begins. Let me leave you with this. The world will always pay you what you have agreed to accept. If you want more freedom, more meaning, more impact, more of the life you imagined, you must become more, not louder, not busier, more knowledgeable, more skilled, more disciplined, more intentional about who you are becoming. That is the work, not the work your employer assigned you, the work you assign yourself. And that work, quiet, daily, compounding, invisible to most, is the most important work of your life. If this message has spoken to you today, if you feel, sitting where you are right now, that this is exactly what you needed to hear, then share it with someone. Send it to the person in your life who has been giving everything they have to someone else's dream and has not yet been told that they deserve to invest in their own. That is not a small thing. That is a gift. If you have stayed with me through this entire teaching, if you have given this 30 minutes of your attention, then you are already demonstrating the kind of discipline we have been talking about. You are already choosing to invest in yourself. I want you to make one more small investment right now. Subscribe to this channel, not because I am asking you to, because you have seen what we do here. This depth of teaching, this specificity, this commitment to giving you the architecture and not just the inspiration. This is what we bring every single week. One click. And every time we release a message like this one, it will find you. The person who shows up consistently for their own development is the person who designs the life they imagined. Then be that person. You came here today looking for something. I hope you found it. Not just the words, but the architecture beneath them. Aiming the decision to work harder on yourself than you do on your job is not a single moment. It is a daily practice beginning tomorrow morning. Ding ding, thanks for watching. The end screen has more messages in the same world. Pick one and keep going. The next step is already waiting for you. Pick whichever video on the end screen calls to you.